Good day, my wonderful 13 students. Hope you're having a great time. A little informal today, sorry about that. I'm doing it after hours. Today, our write it down period is going to be on Charles Darwin. You're going to need a blank piece of paper. Here we go. Okay, so Charles Darwin, you can see the years he was born. Look, I understand that you probably know a lot about this guy. He, of course, is one of the most famous people in world history, all right? And I know that your science teachers have taught you a lot about him, so I'm going to probably do some repetition here, but there's a point to what I'm trying to teach you about today as far as this guy is concerned, and why he's important and why we should know about him, and what he has to do with modern world history. Okay, so he's British, all right? I would basically call him a naturalist. He was a scientist by trade, alrighty? And, you know, you've probably seen a picture of him. He's got long, like this, he's bald, and he's got this long white beard. That's sort of how, he was famous by the time he's older. But really, what he's really famous for is a trip that he took when he was 22 years old. And he was a young scientist, sort of trying to finish school. He's really going abroad. And so he gets this job to be a naturalist as the British are starting to explore the places that they are looking at. And again, think about the British Empire map that we all made together. So he gets a job with basically the British Navy, obviously sponsored by the British government. And the boat that he gets assigned to is the HMS Beagle. That's exactly what it was called. HMS Her Majesty's ship, the Beagle. That's almost like the Pickle. Remember the Pickle back in the Battle of Trafalgar? This is obviously after Napoleon, but the HMS Beagle. And of course, you all know that the most famous stop that they took was the Galapagos Islands. And now, why is this significant? Okay, the Galapagos Islands is right off the coast of the west coast of South America. It's right on the equator. But interestingly enough, the animals there have no innate fear of humans. And what that means is, you see animals on Maui, and when they see you, for the most part, they run away. They do have an innate fear of humans as a threat to them. Well, the animals on the Galapagos Island were so secluded for so long that they're not afraid of humans. And so what does that mean? That means that they can be easily observed. This is the whole deal to this whole thing, how you can get right up to him. And remember Jane Goodall way back in world history class? So Jane Goodall was the one who studied the chimpanzees in Africa. She took a long time for her to get the chimpanzees to not run away. They say it took her over a year, almost a year and a half, so the chimpanzees would stop running away. So this is not a problem on the Galapagos Islands, and to a degree, my understanding, it's still the same way. There was no predators to the animals there. Humans were not predators. It was far enough away from the coast of South America that humans were not over there hunting on the Galapagos Islands. So we associate Charles Darwin with evolution. He's not the first one to come up with the concept of evolution, but what he's most well known for is he has done the best job of trying to explain how evolution works. Okay? And this is what he's most known for. And you know this term, this stuff you all know. This is this business of natural selection. Okay, so how does this natural selection stuff work? Okay, again, probably this is a review for you all because you're all very smart. And that is basically that within any population of a species, there's going to be variable condition. There's going to be variables in individual characteristics, length of arm, height, weight, those types of things. Okay, and I'm not talking about I'm talking about any animal species specifically. Okay, like one of the things we're going to get to is birds here in a minute. So, like in a species of birds, there's going to be various characteristics. The most important things that animal life does is eat. That's what animals do, including humans, of course. We eat, they eat, we all eat each other, etc., etc. Okay? So there's going to be competition for food. So all of this is going to come down to which characteristics of the particular population are going to be the most advantageous, is the word I use here, at getting food. That's going to be the trick. How do you get the food? How does one bird get the food better than the other bird? Okay? And needless to say, those with the best advantages, okay, are going to eat more. And if those with the best advantages eat more, well, that means that they're going to live longer. Okay? And then that means that those particular parts, those particular members of that species at that particular time, they're going to have little baby members of that species. And those advantageous traits are going to get passed off to their little babies. All right? And so this implies that the better characteristics are going to continue within a species. And characteristics that are not advantageous to getting food are not. All right? And so a species will evolve. This is the whole point that he was talking about, that Darwin was talking about, is that certain characteristics are going to favor certain members of the species over old characteristics. Okay? All right, now, I can get into this as we go along here in a little bit more detail, give you some more specific examples as we go along. Okay? All right, now, the next thing I want to point out is this other term that we associate with him, and that is called survival of the fittest. And I know you've heard this term as well, and this is a very important part of the story of Charles Darwin. We associate with him. It is not his term. He did not invent it. There's nothing wrong with associating with him because that's certainly what he's implying. But it's not a term that he invented. There were other people talking about it. He took this term and ran with it with his natural selection idea. Those with better traits, okay? Those with the better traits will be more fit, all right? They will be better off than other members of the same species and able to survive. Okay, now, let's do 3 examples here of what I'm talking about. 3 examples, all right? So, example number 1 is going to be giraffes. Giraffes are always easy to use in this discussion. Giraffes have long necks. Where is the giraffe's food source? The giraffe's food source is up high. Okay, so the long-necked giraffe is going to be able to reach the food source more easily than the oddly shaped giraffe with a short neck. Okay, now I get it that the water is down below. I've seen giraffes. They drink water from below. I get all that, but I'm saying that the giraffe's food source is up high, so it makes sense that the longer-necked giraffes are going to eat more than the shorter-necked giraffes. Shorter-necked giraffes may not be able to reach the food source, so the likelihood is that longer-necked giraffes are going to have little baby giraffes that are longer necks. Okay. All right, the next example is horses. Why are horses fast? Okay, well, it's very simple. What happened to all the slow horses? This is the old joke about if you're one of 10 friends in the forest and a bear attacks you, you don't have to be the fastest. You only have to be the ninth fastest, because the bear is going to catch the slowest one. Okay, it's the same thing. Predators like the big felines, the lions, the tigers, the leopards, things like that, they're not looking for the fastest zebra. Okay, they're looking for the slowest zebra. So the point I'm getting at is that horses with longer legs run faster. Horses with shorter legs run slower. Shorter legged horses are going to get caught more easily as prey. Okay? And then the third one I want to do right here is birds. And this is really sort of the main one that we associate with Darwin. And it has mostly to do with birds' beaks. So I'm just going to add this right here. Darwin observed 2 sorts of birds' characteristics, beaks. One of the types of beaks that he noticed was this long, birds with this super long extended beak. Okay? Like so. And these birds ate insects. And they were able to get at insects that were trying to hide, because their nature of their beaks was such that they could get into small little places to eat. The other type of birds he noticed, look, this is a profile, these are profiles pointed that way. The other type of bird he noticed were birds that had short beaks like so, okay? Like that, sort of like so, okay? Now, these birds were good at breaking things. So they could like eat, and I guess nuts is my first thing I sort of think about. But they could break things. They could catch big beetles, and they could break the hard shell of the beetle and eat that. Okay, so that's sort of how I would sort of think about that. And this is really probably more than anything else, what Darwin was able to observe on the Galapagos itself. And one of the things I should say is the other thing about this is that this process takes a long time. This is not something that just happens overnight. This is a difficult, long process. But again, he's there for a long time. He's able to observe these things. He's there for, the beagle actually left him, The beagle dropped him off. And he was there virtually by himself for months alone. And the beagle said, okay, we're going to come pick you up later on. But that was what was going on. Okay? So what's the importance of this? Well, this is exactly the whole story behind this. There is an implication that humans have somehow evolved over the course of time, and that humans must have evolved from some lower life form. This is the big issue. All right, and of course we talked about the evolution of humans in world history class, and the controversy that I think exists around that. Okay, the intelligent design versus evolution stuff. And this is sort of, I should tell you that when he finally publishes his book, this is exactly the first thing that everybody went bonkers over. When his book came out, his book really came out in the 1860s when he was an older guy. He didn't write it in his 20s. He was only at the Galapagos for about a year and a half. Okay, but he didn't write his book till he was older. Okay, and this is the first thing. Everybody starts talking about his book. Nobody wanted to talk about birds. Well, he talked about birds in his book. Nobody wanted to talk about that. When his book came out, everyone wanted to talk about humans, which there is a discussion. What is that? One of the things he implied, or is it just, was he saying it outright, or was it just sort of a question worth asking? So I would argue the other thing we should say about this is this continues the scientific challenge to religion. Certainly this is a challenge to the creation story of the Bible, certainly. Okay? And then you're going to have this tug of war between church and religion continue. Okay, now, letter C is going to be the most critical one for our purposes in this course. And I have used this term with you before. I actually used this with you before in political spectrum number 1, way back in world history class. And what happens, and again, there's a debate about whether Charles Darwin considered himself one of these or not. This begins something called social Darwinism. Okay? Now, if you recall this on political spectrum 1, this is all the way over at the far right. What does this mean? This one means Darwinism, as he applied it to animals, the social Darwinists applied it to humans. And what this implies, social Darwinists are implying right off the bat, is that humans are different in their characteristics. Okay? And not just, some people are tall and some people are short. There are other more significant, which is obvious, which is true. But there are other more significant characteristics which make different groups of people different from others. So, therefore, what I really should say is this survival of the fittest term, social Darwinists apply that to humans. So if human characteristics are different, that must mean some humans are superior or more fit than others. All right, that's exactly. Now, what are some examples? Well, I think probably the most obvious one you would probably think of would be race. And, again, we did our whole unit on Hitler, and this is obviously a function of that discussion. Another one could be by class. Okay, now that's not being tall or short, is it? Okay, that's taking another reach beyond the biological differences of human. That's something different, isn't it? But this is exactly what social Darwinists were doing. By nation. Okay, not just Hitler. We're talking about other. Look, the Europeans were the biggest on this, especially the Germans are the one who take this to the biggest step. By business, okay, here we are. We're talking about the Industrial Revolution. We talked about Rockefeller. We talked about J.P. Morgan and guys like that. Okay, so were these guys their characteristics make them more fit than others? The other one I would say is just by intelligence. And again, this is okay. Look, there's an element that this is true about people, but is it true about a certain group of people versus another group of people? That's the question. And now suddenly, what do social Darwinists have? Suddenly, social Darwinists have an excuse for all the things that they really sort of believe in. So at least 5 things. Watch, I'm going to go in the same order. So you could say, what's there an excuse for now? Well, the first one is racism and or slavery. Okay? Suddenly there's an excuse. What's the big deal? Humans are different. What's the problem? Okay? The next one is social inequality. Well, yeah, of course there's poor people because they're less fit than these rich people over here. The next one is nationalism. Okay, right? And nationalism, and then these superior nations go out and imperial and create colonies all over the place, all over the world. And militarism is one of them. And look, I've talked about this as well. There's no doubt that the Europeans were the first to get advanced weapons, and of course we talked about that with agriculture and river valleys and things like that. Okay? In business, Rockefeller and J.P. Morgan almost had monopolies over entire businesses, and those things became illegal. The United States government made those illegal in the early 1900s. Why would some guy create a monopoly? Well, all these other business owners are inferior. Okay, so the most extreme of this whole thing, okay, the most extreme of this whole thing is something called, all right, this is something called the eugenics movement, all right, and you need to understand this, and you need to realize that this was very big. The Germans liked it the most, and they're going to manifest it more than anybody else, but this is popular in the rest of Western Europe, and frankly, this is popular in the United States from the earliest 1900 right up through the 1920s. The eugenics movement is very, very popular. And what this did was, it was basically an argument that a nation or a place should systematically try to improve the genetic makeup of a population. Okay? Now, what does that really mean? Well, I'll just give you one name, Hitler. Okay, Hitler is exactly what Hitler was trying to do. This is exactly what he was trying to do. Okay? He was trying to improve the genetic makeup of a population by doing what? Well, we eliminate these people at the bottom of our population hierarchy. Okay? They can't reproduce, right? This is the whole, goes back to, they can't reproduce. That goes up exactly what Darwin was talking about, right? Okay? Eugenics movement. It's kind of scary, and don't think for a moment that it doesn't still exist. It does. Okay, everybody? Okay, there you go. Charles Darwin, this last part right here, social Darwinism, eugenics movement, that's the most important thing to remember about our discussion of modern world history. And obviously you can see this thing manifesting itself in Europe right up through World War II. Okay? All right, very good. All done. You can put that piece of paper in your front section. And remember, even though I'm not here, I'm still here.